Hello everyone. Hello everyone. Welcome to my very first webinar. I'm very happy to see you all here. I'm starting a little bit early just to make sure that everything works basically. Can you hear me? Can you see me? I have no idea. Can you please type into this chat box something like yes or okay if everything is fine? Or if it's not fine, tell me. Maybe I need to put my mic close or something like that. I will have a look in the chat box. Yes, okay, yes. Excellent, excellent. And I see that we have here people from all over the world. Wonderful. Very happy to see you here. So we still have 1 minute just to give other people to join the webinar. We have now 35 people. I will start in a moment. Let me just to get used to this position here. 28, 29, 35. Excellent. Yes, it's 6:30 here in the UK. So we're starting. First of all, I would like to tell you a little bit of my life story. And there is a reason for that. The reason is that I will show you, when I was working on this story, preparing a plan, I noticed that one particular planet keeps repeating in this story on all the important turns and points again and again in many different ways. And I will show you how it does it. And the planet this is Uranus. I will show you my slides. Let me see if it works. How do I share? Here. Okay. Full screen. Share. Woohoo. And here I've got my slides. Okay. Many faces of Uranus. So I usually say that I became the student of astrology in the end of the 1980s. And that is true. But my education, I had some very interesting early education. And these themes like space exploration, aviation, astronomy, astrology, new technologies started coming into my life into the at the very early stage. I should start from my parents' family, in particular from my father, who was a cosmonaut. He spent most of his life, actually all of his life, in the cosmonauts team. He was trained and trained and trained for many years for his space flight, but he never made it. He never made his flight. Still, you can find him on the internet. This is my father, actually. I found him on the internet, and it's written here that he's a Russian cosmonaut, and he was, yes. He's now retired, but he is an Air Force colonel, a PhD, a professor. This is my father. So you see, it's quite a Uranian kind of roots. He always loved everything related to aviation and space exploration. And he was a very active parachute jumper. He had a few thousands of parachute jumps, and even myself, with his help, I did a few dozens of parachute jumps. Quite an interesting experience. And I lived in the Star City. You see again this Uranic background. And what's interesting about my parents' family, you see, cosmonauts in the Soviet Union were a kind of celebrities. Those cosmonauts who did their space flight were top celebrities. But even those who, like my father, were in the background, they didn't make it yet. They were also quite, prominent people. And my father had all sorts of connections, and we had different, sometimes strange people coming as our guests. There were yogis, astrologers, psychics, all sorts of different people. And they used to bring with them strange texts. In the Soviet Union, things like yoga or astrology were impossible because they were not compatible with communist ideology. They were forbidden. You couldn't see any astrology anywhere at all. But those strange guests used to bring with them different mysterious texts. Astrology was a popular kind of astrology, but still very interesting. And my duty was to make copies of those texts. I had a mechanic typewriter, and I used to spend many hours typing copies of those texts, and that was my very early university. I also was very good at chemistry at school. I loved chemistry. I knew it very well. I won many competitions in chemistry, and everyone thought that I will go to Moscow University, which was and is the top university in Russia, in the USSR. And I was really going to go to the university, but half a year before finishing the school, I changed my mind. I said, I don't want to become a chemist. I'm a warrior. I want to be a military officer like pretty much every boy in my class. So, surprise, surprise, I went, instead of Moscow University, to an obscure military college near Moscow. I'm on the left-hand side of this picture, a bit sulky, with my mates. So I never really felt myself very well in the army, but I did manage to graduate, even with distinction, from that military college. And here, my friend and I, with our wives, on the graduation day in that military college. And I was a specialist in the guidance systems of ballistic missiles. I think it's quite a bit of Uranus as well. And this is the piece of equipment which we were trained to use in our college, so-called SS-20. It's quite a Uranus thing, I'd say, because it's the top technologies of that age. And also it's got, nuclear warheads, maybe even made of uranium, who knows. So that's another manifestation of Uranus in my life. Fast forward to the end of the 1980s, which I already mentioned. At that time, I worked as a researcher in a military research center near Moscow. I was quite a successful researcher with very good prospects. Everything went very well. Suddenly, I became interested in astronomy, not astrology, astronomy. Somehow, a thought came to my mind that I don't know enough of astronomy. I need to know it better. So I took some textbooks, spent a few weeks reading them. And I remember one night I was trying to fall asleep, but couldn't, because I was trying to make all those spheres, ecliptic, equator, meridian, rotating, and I tried to imagine them in my head. And I couldn't sleep because of that. And at some point, maybe at 2 o'clock in the morning, I did manage to make them work in my head. And then I fell asleep. And since then, celestial mechanics were a piece of cake for me. So somehow, since then, I have this feeling that we are being led, that we are given lessons to learn in our lives. Because where did that interest of astronomy came from? I have no idea. But it prepared me so nicely for what happened later. And later, perestroika came. And with perestroika, strange things started happening. Books and lectures on astrology became widely available in Moscow. Academy of Astrology was created, and there were hundreds and hundreds of students. Their lectures were in huge lecture halls, in the biggest lecture halls in Moscow. There were so many students, and I was there, of course, among those students. And books on astrology were in photocopies, and photocopying machines were actually forbidden for use in the USSR for normal people. So all those photocopies were kind of illegal and very expensive, but you could buy books of Russian astrologers of the beginning of the 20th century, many Western books brought from abroad. And this is how I got my first ephemeris and some other books as well. And then the year 1990 came, which is a very, very special year in my life. It started from visit of Jacob Schwartz, the astrologer Jacob Schwartz, to Moscow. It was in April, and there was like a week or maybe more of lectures. And in those lectures, he just showed us the state of Western astrology as it is. He started very simple from natal charts, but he then showed different methods like secondary progressions, solar arc directions, pretty much everything very briefly that there is in astrology. And that was such a university for me. It was amazing. I recorded those lectures, I printed them. It was such a boost for me. And in that year, previously, I destroyed my chemist's career when I went to the army. And now, in the year 1990, I destroyed my military career. I was a captain. I was expected to become a major in half a year. My career was successful, but I decided to just leave it and to become a full-time student of astrology. Here in the slide, it says Uranus went retrograde in secondary progression in that year. It's wrong. It was retrograde at birth. If you understand what it is, if you don't mind it, just don't pay attention. But if you know astrology, a little bit of astrology, and you know all those progressions, I will tell a little bit about them later. Uranus went direct in secondary progression in that year. I need to correct this slide. So I left the army in November 1990 and became a full-time student of astrology, destroying my career for the second time. So if you know houses, can you please tell me in which house I have my Uranus? From what I already told you, can you please type in the chat box if you know? If you don't, it's just just challenging you a little bit. And then I'm saying that this is when my real life started. Okay. Yeah, 10th house. That's right. That's right. Everything is correct. Thank you. Great. So the year was 1990, and I became a full-time student of astrology. And very, very soon, actually in the year 1992, I became also a teacher of astrology. Here I'm showing you a picture of so-called Vronsky School. This school was organized by my teacher, Avgustina Semenko. You can see here in the very center of this picture, and I was taking the picture, so I'm not in it. And this is our class, our students in that Vronsky School. There were two teachers, Avgustina and myself. And after a while, this school was taught in Moscow. And after a while, I started traveling around Russia. I traveled to many cities in Russia, reading lectures on astrology. And here I am shown reading one of those lectures in one of the cities of Russia. Also, I went to Riga, Latvia, the capital of Latvia, which was previously a part of the USSR, but now is a separate country. And what's interesting, at some point, there were even serious talks about an astrology department in Riga University. And I remember a letter discussing that officially with me and offering me, I don't know, I don't remember, maybe probably even to lead that astrology department, or for sure to teach there. So that was a very, very exciting time. I was writing articles, traveling, lecturing. Also, there were great international astrology conferences in Moscow. People from all over the world would come there, and I met many wonderful astrologers. For example, on this photo, I'm with Derek Appleby. Derek Appleby is one of the very well-known English astrologers. He was the astrologer who introduced the art of horary astrology to the Western world after it was forgotten for centuries. I also met Nick Campion, the president of the Astrological Association of Great Britain at that time. Now he's my tutor in the University of Wales. Maggie Hyde, Jeffrey Cornelius, and many other brilliant astrologers. Then by the end of the 1990s, the problem was at that time that life was extremely exciting and interesting. The problem was we didn't have that much money as astrologers. Our job wasn't that well paid. So I was looking for a way to earn some money, and in the end of the 1990s, I joined some non-astrology related business and worked in it. So I wasn't as active in the astrological community anymore, but I started writing. And this is my very first book. It's on astrology. The title is The Cosmic Rhythms of Life. And basically this book is the lectures of my teacher, Agustina Semenko, for beginners in my adaptation. And I translated some extensive pieces of this abstracts from this book for my website Lunarium, and it's available there. You might probably find it, or I might post some links here on this page later after the webinar. This was my very first book, and a few years later I published my most successful second book. It was called Teach Yourself Astrology with Computer and Without It. Interestingly, the publishing house which published this book, they specialized in software. They published mostly books explaining how to use Photoshop and Word, Excel, different software applications. And they approached me and told me, look, we want to publish a book on astrology and about using astrology programs. And so the result was this book. And it was quite popular. I think it was one of the most popular astrology books in Russia for many years. It was in print for over a decade. And many astrologers, Russian astrologers, are writing to me to tell me that we started from your book. Thank you very much. It was so good. And you know what? A pleasant surprise for me is that right now I just agreed with the publishing house in Russian about publishing this book again, an updated version of this book, maybe by the end of this year, maybe in the beginning of the next year. So this book was a success. And in the year 2004, I published my numerology book. It wasn't as popular as the astrology book, but many people praise it. And also this book brought some surprises with it. For example, my father, he's now retired, he's 80 years old. And a few years ago, he surprised me by telling me, you know what, I have this numerology book written by you. And I started reading it, and I'm now writing numerology profiles for all my friends and former colleagues. And they're so precise and they're so in-depth, and everyone is astonished. So my father became a numerologist thanks for reading my book. And the other surprise came quite recently, maybe half a year ago. I was in Russia, and I visited the family of my friend who already died. He was a good friend, but he was never interested in any astrology, numerology. But still, when I published a book, I would bring a copy for him as a souvenir, and he would just keep them on a shelf somewhere. And I was in Russia, I was speaking with his family, and his son, who is a successful businessman, 30 plus, young guy, told me, you know, I found this numerology book and I started reading it and I understood a lot about my colleagues and about other people, and I keep reading it all the time, and I'm learning a lot. And I was really astonished because I wouldn't expect, because his father didn't care about these things at all. And he's such a young and active and successful businessman, and he was so much interested in this book. But let me go further on. In 2005, I moved to the UK. I became a student of Glasgow Caledonian University. I was 43 at that time, and graduated with distinction in 2006. And since then, I basically worked for more than 10 years for British companies as a software developer, mostly as a mobile developer. That was one side of my life. The other side of my life was hidden. In the evenings, over weekends, I created my website, lunarium.co.uk. I self-published a number of astrology and numerology books, small ones, but one of them is a bigger book. I will show you it in a moment. I created several mobile apps. Of them, the most successful is iLuna. And it was my very first app, and it is still the most successful of all. Now we came to the end of my life story. It's the year 2017 now. What I'm doing now is I'm destroying my career the third time as my life. I don't want to be a programmer anymore. I want to go back to astrology. I want to teach astrology. So I created an online astrological school, Astro School, lunarium.co.uk, and I'm already working on my very first astrology course. Maybe I will tell you a little bit more about it later during this webinar. And I have more than 60 students, very active, very interesting students working with me on this course to make it the best course on astrology. So this is my life story. Now I want you to tell about what I'm trying to do in astrology. What's my approach? See, for me, there are two major kinds of astrology. One of them is popular astrology, which is very popular, which is everywhere. I think pretty much everyone in the world knows a little bit of that astrology. And the other one is proper astrology, or I would call it technical astrology, because there are so many technicalities in it. And there is a precipice between them. Here on this picture, this high and tough rock is like professional proper astrology. It's very high, but very isolated as well. And what I'm trying to do basically is to build bridges between popular astrology and technical astrology. Maybe not such a flimsy bridges like this one, but I don't know. I'm just trying. I'm only beginning, basically. Popular astrology. Popular astrology is very popular indeed. I think there are billions of people who know at least about 12 signs of the zodiac, who read those so-called horoscopes, who know what different signs of the zodiac are. But this kind of astrology is very superficial. I suspect that most of those people think that 12 signs and horoscopes is everything there is in astrology. There is nothing else. It's just that's popular stuff. And also they're prone to any scam or any kind of deception, like those stories about the 13th sign of the zodiac. They don't know what the zodiac is. They don't know what the signs are. So they can believe anything, which is not very good for us astrologers, because isolation, the precipice becomes bigger as a result of those 13 signs attacks. Proper astrology is very complex. It takes years to learn. It actually takes the whole life to learn, because once you started learning it, you're never satisfied by what you can do, and you keep learning and learning and learning. There is a huge potential in this astrology, but it is seldom realized, just because when you used already all those complex methods, you often become overwhelmed. You think, wow, that's such a lot of work. Now, how I understand what I've got? And there is like a tendency to always be looking for something more complex, something more precise. You think, I don't understand everything now, but if I use some more complex method, I will probably understand more. Some more precise method, I will probably understand it better. And there are relatively few people who really know this stuff, actually. Maybe a few thousands in the whole world. And they live pretty much in isolation and among popular misunderstanding, because people have no idea what they're doing. They're coming for their conferences, speak the language which nobody understands, and even when they have discoveries and insights, they cannot really effectively share them because people don't understand their language. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to connect these two groups of people. And my most successful project so far in this direction was the Moon Sign project. What I tried to do, I tried to create a crack in the wall of astrological ignorance, how I define it. So it all started like the question which I started asking on my website. Do you know what you also have a moon sign? Because normally people interested in popular astrology know some sign of the zodiac associated with their date of birth. They might call it star sign or something else. But that's just one sign, and they think this is it. This is everything you can know about astrology. I'm Aries or Taurus or Gemini, that's it. And now I'm telling them, do you know that you also have a moon sign? And it's also very important. It may be even more important than your sun sign, which you call star sign. The problem with the moon sign, of course, is that you cannot easily find it out, like you can find out sun sign from your birth date. You need to do some complex astronomical calculations for that. So I created free online moon sign calculator. And that, if you are interested in search engine optimization, as many people are these days, I did something very wrong. Normally, how do you build website? You go and find out what people are searching for on the internet. And then you create a website full of those terms which they're searching for. At that time, when I created my moon sign calculator, nobody in the world was searching for moon sign. But I decided, okay, I will still introduce this idea to the world. So I created that moon sign. I've written about moon sign calculator. I've written about what moon sign is. And you know what? And gradually over the years, more and more people were coming and discovering their moon signs on my website. And currently, this website has over 30,000 daily page views. And most of them, the greatest majority of them, is on the moon sign calculator. So it's like a source of this discovery for many people. And some people write me emails like, wow, I found out that I am actually this sign. And some people don't recognize their moon sign. Some people recognize it very brightly. Well, my descriptions in this calculator are very brief. They might not always perfect, but sometimes they work very, very well. The other side of my moon sign project is the moon sign book. This book is actually a result of quite a substantial research. It's got more than 250 pages, and I took astrological information from Astro Data Bank, which provides precise birth times and charts for many, many, many people. So I was like collecting people with the same moon sign and trying to notice common traits. And sometimes you could clearly see, for example, moon in Aries, they need to spend their energy in some way. So many of them are sportsmen or people taking part in some very active things, some high-speed things, but also there were many surprises. For example, my two favorites is Moon and Taurus. The fact is that there are many famous mystics who have the moon in Taurus. Examples are Edgar Cayce, Carlos Castaneda, Emanuel Swedenborg, Jane Roberts, Carl Gustav Jung. They all have the moon in Taurus, and that's quite a puzzle, because you usually think, okay, Taurus is, it's the earth sign, it's people who don't really care about those mysterious things, they're practical, they're pragmatic. But moon in Taurus is a special case, and I did find an explanation for that in my book. I have some rationale behind this fact. Also, moon in Capricorn is very interesting, because I was surprised to find that very many cool men actors have the moon in Capricorn, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Matt Damon, Brad Pitt, George Clooney. What a collection of names. And let me show you this book briefly, where I am. Stop sharing. Okay, here is this book, very substantial, quite thick. So if you're interested, I've put some links below. How do I start sharing my screen again? Sorry. Okay. Here I am again. So below this video, you will see some links on the Moon Sign project. By the way, have you noticed that there is also your bonus and a link to the PDF book, which I promised as a bonus for those who will join this webinar? Please download that book, and I will be speaking about it a little bit later. But also, if you're interested in my Moon Sign book, there are some links to it, and it's available in PDF format, in many mobile formats, and as well as a Kindle book and a paper book, basically. Okay. So my other project, which tries to bring this bridge, to build this bridge between popular astrology and professional and technical astrology, is my new course, Astrological Forecasting for Everyone. What I'm planning to do in this course, I just created the 29th, I think, lesson of 50 or 51 or 52 maybe. So more than half of them is ready. And the idea of this course is that I'm taking people with no knowledge of astrology whatsoever and avoiding as much as possible any technicalities. I'm bringing them to the knowledge how to write popular astrological forecasts competently and confidently. Those forecasts which people read in newspapers, magazines for the signs of the zodiac, on websites, I think I know a way how to teach that without learning all the heavy machinery of astrology. And this is a kind of experiment, but I have so many years of experience of teaching astrology that I'm confident I will succeed. And my wonderful volunteers will help me to prove that. And this course works. My plan is that it should work from both sides. It should be important both for those who are interested in popular astrology and for technical astrologers as well. For newcomers, it will teach many interesting and important elements of astrology, such as planets, symbolism of planets, signs, and the most important concept in astrology is houses. But I am approaching them in a very specific, specially designed way. And I have quite a number of people who are new to astrology, and so far the feedback was quite good. And on the other hand, this course should work for technical astrologers as an eye-opener. What I mean by this? Usually technical astrologers think, those popular forecasts, it's nothing. We don't believe in them. We spent so many years learning how to do astrology. What can you do for forecasting for the whole sign of the zodiac, for 1/12 of humanity? But it does actually work. Uh, I'm hoping to show in this course, and I have some people who know astrology already, that astrology can be very simple and still it can work in a very interesting and informative way. I have one example to tell you. One of my relatives now has serious problems in his marriage. Basically, they're going to divorce, and he is Gemini. He's a Gemini. His son is in Gemini, and his wife is a Libra. So it's really, speaking superficially, a very good kind of partnership. They're both air signs. It's a trine. It's a good relationship. It should be a good relationship. And now they're going to divorce. And if you use this sun sign astrology approach, you can figure out their problem easily. Why? Because Saturn is in Sagittarius, and this is the seventh house, the house of partners for Gemini. And this actually, the symbolism of Saturn describes the problems of my relative Libra, and Uranus is now in Aries, in the seventh house for Libra. And Uranus describes her attitude to marriage very well, because she's looking for freedom. So, and I noticed that not only the symbolism of the planets describes their situation very well, but also the timing when the planets entered the signs, when they form aspects, describes the situation very, very well. I'm not saying that every Gemini married to Libra are going to divorce now, but astrology is the art of particular cases. It shows itself in different lives differently, but the symbolism is the same. So here is a kind of slogan illustrating my approach. If there is an important message for you, astrology will deliver it, no matter how you approach it. Just be consistent. You can come to astrology with the most complex technical methods, or you can come with sun sign methods. And if there is a message, you will find it. Just do what you are doing consistently. Think about this. There are different zodiacs. There is a tropical zodiac, there is sidereal zodiac, there is even draconic zodiac. And if you use different zodiacs, the chart will look for you very differently. It will have different messages for you. Some people argue which of them is more correct, which one is better. Same thing with ascendants. Well, in the West, we use only one ascendant. In Hindu astrology, in Jyotish, you can use proper ascendant, you can use ascendant, which is the moon can be taken as the ascendant, or Atmakaraka can be taken as the ascendant. So they play with the chart much more freely than what we do in the West. And don't forget that Jyotish is the kind of astrological tradition which wasn't interrupted for 1,000 years, whereas Western astrology died out and then was reborn a few times. So there can be different ascendants. There can be different system of houses. You can use Placidus, you can use Koch, you can use Regimentanus. Which one is more correct? Which one is better? And some people keep arguing which one is correct, which one is better. But I will tell you, they're all correct. They're all good. You just need to be consistent. Use whatever you use, whatever you prefer. These are just different tools. Our world is a hologram. You can look at it from different angles. You can use different instruments to try to understand it. But it's the same world, and you probably will find different messages, but using different methods, but about the same. So I will tell you about the book which I brought for you as a bonus. The book is called DIY Astrology, Discover the Main Phases of Your Life. This is my another attempt to build a bridge. I took a method from the professional astrology, from the technical astrology, secondary progression, it even sounds very technically, and I simplified it in such a way that pretty much everyone, even without any knowledge of astrology, can use it and get some interesting results. I will need to explain you a little bit the essence of this method. It's explained very well by a phrase, a day for a year. What's the idea? For example, a person was born, let's say, on the 1st of January 1980 at 2 o'clock. At the moment when this person was born, the situation in the sky was like fixed in his or her natal chart. Natal chart is a snapshot of the sky at the moment of birth. And so this chart will stay as it is forever. But astrology says also planets continue to move. And the movement of planets in the first day after birth will model or what's the word? Symbolize if the events of the first year of this person's life. The first day after birth shows the first year of life. The second day after birth shows the second year of life, and so on. The 20th year after birth shows the 20th year of life. And everything that's happening in the sky in those days shows you symbolically what will be happening in those years. And I used this method in a very simple way to impress my audience when I was lecturing in different cities. What would normally happen during a break in the middle of the lecture, or maybe after lecture? People from the audience would come to me and basically ask me to tell something about themselves quickly. And what can you tell in the break between two lectures? It's difficult, isn't it? But I had a book of ephemeris with me all the time, a book which lists positions of planet for many years, for every day. And I would just tell them, what is your date of birth? They would tell me. And I would just look into the ephemeris, find in the ephemeris the line corresponding to the date of birth, and then look downwards to see what changes were in the sky. I usually looked for planets becoming retrograde, or vice versa, becoming direct, planets that were retrograde at birth. And once I found the line where a planet turns retrograde, I would count how many days passed after birth till that change. And I would tell them, when you were 24, there was a major change in your life. And I would describe that change using the symbolism of the planet which turned. For example, if it was Uranus, it was a major disruption, and so on and so on. And that worked amazingly well. A very good trick to impress your audience. So I created this book where I explain how to use this method in a very simple way. The idea is, if you were born like 10 days before a full moon, then on the 10th year of your life, there will be an event similar to full moon. And it's quite easy to find, because if you find a calendar for the year of your birth, you can find usually the phases can be seen in the calendar. Or you could use universal calendar on my website, or this book. You will see it has a huge appendix with the dates of the phases of the moon for many years. So it's not a big deal to find the date of a phase, closest phase after the birth. And but since the book was published, I did it even better. I created a free online of the progressed moon phases. By the way, I wanted to show you, this is my free online moon sign calculator, which is very popular. It brings thousands of people every day. And this is This is the calculator, the main phases of your life. You can enter the date of birth, the time of birth, the time zone, and it will calculate you and show you your progressed lunar phases. How they work, these phases. Let me give you a couple of, because in my book I give examples from my life, and in general, to keep things simple for now, the progressed new moon is like a beginning of new life. And I have this progressed new moon in the year 2004, right before coming to the UK. That was a strange year because before that I lived in Cyprus, worked in Cyprus. I came back to Russia. It was like some part of my life was ending. There was a clear feeling. And I didn't know what to do. This is quite typical for the progressed new moon, that you're feeling like at the crossroads because one period, major period of your life has just ended, and something new will come, but not yet. And by the end of that year, 2004, the idea came to me that I should go to the UK and become a student. And so I did. And that started a completely new life for me, very different from my previous life. And progressed full moon is a major turning point. It's like, excuse me, it's like a mountain pass. Uh, a half of that major period of life is already behind, and you're at the top on the mountain. What's going on? And you can see that you were going upwards. Now you're going to go down the mountain, and that's a very major, important turning point. Something major is usually happening on the year of the progressed full moon. In my case, that year 1990, when I did something totally ridiculous for everyone who knew me. I left the army. I left the successful army career to become a student of astrology. And that was first the year when Uranus turned direct in secondary progression. And second, it was the year of my progressed full moon. You see, again, when astrology has an important message, it will show it in a few different ways. So I think this book, this approach of the use of secondary progressions in everyday life by everyone, it has its good potential. Maybe it will not become as popular as the moon sign calculator, but I still hope it will help to narrow down the gap between popular astrology and technical astrology. And to summarize and to close down this my story about my approach to astrology, I think that astrology is primarily and should be primarily the tool for self-discovery. I'm now a student of the University of Wales, Trinity St. David. The program is MA, Master of Arts in Cultural Astronomy and Astrology. And I'm already at the dissertation stage. And I did some simple research in which the subscribers of my email, Lunarium News, helped me a lot. I had, I think, several hundred respondents on that questionnaire, and I tried to find out what really are people doing with astrology, what they use it for. And what I found that the greatest majority of my responders use astrology as a way of self-discovery. They study astrology in order to better understand themselves and their lives, not to practice astrology for money, not to do something else. That's a tool of self-discovery. And I think this is very important. This is very important for me. This is why I want to be a teacher of astrology. And there is one saying, they say it's an old Chinese proverb: give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. Same with astrology. Give a man or a woman an astrological consultation, and you will help them for a day or a month or maybe a year. Teach that person to do astrology themselves at any level, and you will help them for the whole lifetime. So this is the end of my story, and if you have any questions, please ask them. I will now have a look if what's happening in the chat box and see if I can, if I have questions to answer. Give me a second, please. Okay, so there is a question: what is a secondary progression? Well, I will just maybe already answered this question, but yes, the answer is, I see there is an answer that yes, if you are 40 now, check the 40th day after your birth in the ephemeris and see what's happening there, and the position of planets and their interactions will tell you something about your current year. That's the idea. Let me have another look. How do we get the book? Do you see this link under the webinar window? If you don't, maybe you will need to reload the page, and you will see there is a link, your bonus, and a link to the PDF book about the secondary progressions. Please download it now, because I will leave the link there for another half an hour, but then I will remove it. Do you see the link? Fairy dust. My main goal for this cause, my main goal is to prepare many people. The thing is, I have some specialized, very interesting courses coming, and I want to teach them very much. Courses which show some very effective and at the same time quite simple kinds of astrology, something I was looking for many years. But to manage those courses, some basic knowledge is necessary. And this, my first course, the purpose of it is to give people this knowledge. And I hope I will be able to attract many people from the popular astrology camp, because many people are quite clever and they're ready to accept this knowledge. They just don't see where to get it. This is what I think. So I will offer them this knowledge, and I'm trying to teach it in the most simple, most accessible way. This is my plan. Yes, there is a link pasted in the chat. Please use this link to download the book. Excellent. On the iPad, you can still click on this, well, depending on which apps you have on the iPad. I have a few apps. I can click a link and download a PDF. But look, if on some reason you're attending this webinar, but you cannot download this book, email me and I will send the book to you. It's not a big deal. Well, the reason was to attract more people. It's like I'm learning to do webinars, learning how to attract more people, and so on and so on. So, and I need to actually, why I'm still, I've finished with the slides. Let me go back on screen where I am. Stop sharing. So here I am now. So Yes, thank you for your very kind words. Thank you for your support. I understand that there are many here who are my students on this, my very first course, and I'm delighted to see you here. Thank you very much for coming. Any other questions? Please take your time. I will be here for another 5 to 10 minutes. If you have any questions, please ask. Uh-huh. Okay. Let me see. Who are the most important astrologers alive acting now? Well, there is a very interesting the problem is that many astrologers, just because they live in a kind of isolation, and it so happens they're not very friendly to each other. So there are many different camps which are not friendly to each other. So there are also very different kinds of astrology. There is psychological astrology, which only works with psychological things, not real things in the real world. It's not something I'm interested in, because I'm an engineer. I like to use things. I like to work with things. So if you want me to name astrologers, I think Rob Hand is one of really good astrologers, and he did a huge amount of service for the astrological community, because he and Robert Schmidt, another important name, and Robert Zoller also did a lot of work bringing ancient astrological treatises, translated them from Latin, from Greek, and making them available for many astrologers. Here in the UK, well, there are many good names. Well, my friends, I would certainly mention the Company of Astrology, Maggie Hyde and Jeffrey Cornelius. Jeffrey Cornelius is especially famous for questioning the nature of the astrological moment. His famous book, The Moment of Astrology. They are my friends. I know them very well. And I have my thoughts about that book and about the moment of astrology. These are very important people. There are many more names, but this is at the top of my head, I would say. Let me see what else. Chaldean astrology. I'm not sure what you mean by Chaldean astrology. Basically, historically, there is Babylonian type of astrology. Babylonian astrology. In Babylon, what astrologers did, they kept observing the sky, and they kept recording what's happening in the sky. Their astrology was observational in many ways, and currently science, historical science, and says that how astrology emerged is that those people in Babylon were recording different events in the sky and monitoring what's happening in the world, corresponding to those events, and this is how astrology was figured out. I don't believe that, actually, because as a student of astrology, I kept a diary recording all those aspects, all events in the sky day by day, and trying to find correlation between events in the sky and events in the world. It's not that simple to figure out astrology this way. I don't think it's possible. But then, about 200 or 300 years before Christ, something happened in the world. Some different kind of astrology emerged suddenly. And that astrology was a lot more complex. It was horoscopic astrology. It was in the form similar to our current form. And that kind of astrology was, it's called Hellenistic astrology. Hellenistic astrology, it's the earliest form of horoscopic astrology. All these houses, everything I'm teaching you and will teach in my school is horoscopic astrology, and it emerged like in a few years, and a few people introduced it. So it's still a puzzle. how it emerged. Some people say astrology came from Babylon. I don't believe this. And Robert Schmidt doesn't believe this, and I trust his opinion. And logically, it seems like astrology was introduced into the world in some strange, difficult to explain way. Predicting future events. If astrology is good for predicting future events, it's yes, of course. Astrology is a method of prediction. The thing is, usually you see what's happening in the future as a kind of symbol. For example, you can see that Jupiter forms some configuration with Uranus, or Mars, or Jupiter with Mars, and there can be, if you're studying my course, you already saw how many different keywords are associated with Uranus, with each of the planets, and so they can show themselves in so many different ways. And usually, when making a prediction, you need to find out what exactly will happen then. For example, Jupiter in the second house. Okay, you probably in the seventh house. You probably know already that if you are studying my course, it can be a foreigner, a business partner coming from abroad, right? Or it can be a very wise romantic partner with whom you will marry. These are very different things, right? How do you predict? There are different keys. So what I'm saying, it's possible to predict, but to predict precisely, people like Nostradamus, for example, who is believed to predict events with many details and with much clarity, I think those people had some additional talent. In astrology, you can develop your intuition in such a way that some information will come to you as a flash. Those aspects, the planets, will work just like, like when using tarot cards. A planet can work like cards. They create some pattern for you, and that pattern just guides your thought. And if you have some developed intuition, you can see some fine details and what will really happen with this person. Astrology per se gives you the idea, not the details. Although with experience and taking into account more factors, you can be more specific in your forecast. But yes, of course, astrology primarily it's good. Its usefulness is because it can predict, but still, it's good when you are looking at your own life, and when you predict for yourself, you figure out your circumstances, and you see, okay, I'm now thinking I will have another progressed full moon in 3 to 4 years. That's something major coming, and I can try to figure out in which area of life it will be happening, what will bring it to me, and I will then maybe guide myself accordingly in my current life. Medical astrology. Medical astrology is well, you see, I worked at some point during my years when I was a very active astrologer in Russia. At some point, I worked in a medical institution, in a medical research institution in Moscow, and I was developing the direction of astrology there. And there are kinds of medical astrology which are very medical. What I mean by that, you find some difficult configuration in the chart, and you say, okay, I might have a problem in that area. Then you go to the doctor and say, I have a problem in that area, and doctor will give you a surgery or an antibiotic, something like that. I don't think it's a good use for astrology. You can do that, yes. Astrology can tell you where in the body there might be a problem. But for me, the good use of astrology, I have a very interesting example given by Zipporah Dobbins. I don't remember. Well, a very well-known American astrologer. This is another astrologer whom I like very much. And she gave such an example. Once a man came to her for a consultation, and a man was like, I don't believe in your astrology, just my friend or my wife told me to come to your consultation. This is, I don't believe anything. And she told him, just sit down, relax. Okay, tell me your date of birth, time of birth, place of birth, those details. I will just make you chart and have a look at it. And she looked at his chart and she says, usually I'm very, gentle with people, not aggressive, no nothing. But this guy was so challenging that I decided just to tell him straight without any, subtleties. Look, does it always happen with you that you have, what's the word? I forgot some word. Give me a second. I need a translation. Give me a second. Как понос будет? So, does it always happen that you have constipation then diarrhea, constipation then diarrhea all the time? He says, yes, that happens to me the whole life, and I don't know what to do with this, and no medical doctor can help me. So what Zipporah did, she found the key to this problem in his behavioral patterns, in the way what he does with his life. He had two jobs basically, and with one of those jobs he was very active and proactive, and with the other job he was doing nothing. And that she came to a conclusion that was the problem which influenced his health. And she gave him an advice what to do with his life to make his health better, to arrange his jobs in a different way. And he did. And his health improved very significantly. This is a kind of healing which I think is good for astrology. But when you, because I'm a former student of homeopathy as well, and I'm not very, my attitude to medicine, I think it's not very wise to treat people with antibiotics and surgery every now and then. So I'm not very keen on that medical astrology that helps them to do that. I hope you answered your question in some way. Would you use the north or south node as a point in a yod? I would. But I would try to interpret the whole point, especially it's at the top of the yod where the finger shows. I would certainly use. See, the nodes, they're actually quite important. Unlike some white moon or black moon, which people might use, the nodes in Hindu astrology, in Jyotish, they're real planets. They're called shadow planets, but they're used like the sun, the moon, and the other planets. No difference. So yes, I would try to understand the role of the nodes in a yod. Lunar astrology or general astrology coming soon. Look, what I'm planning, lunar astrology, this was my idea to create like a body of lunar law, formulated and systematized. But this is a very big project. I'm not sure if I will manage it right now. General astrology, yes. But I'm interested in creating this course on the lunar law. just a little bit later. General astrology, my original intent was to create a course. I started, I don't know if you saw them, but I started a project named Micro Lessons. I'm using the same approach in my current course, but Micro Lessons was a different project. It was, the idea was to teach technical astrology, but in very, very small, minute portions. And there were like 200 people who subscribed to those Micro Lessons, and they received it very well. And I'm still going to return to those Micro Lessons and to teach the basics of technical astrology properly using this Micro Lessons approach. That was supposed to be and might still be the second course in this school. However, why I'm saying that it might be or might be not, I now have a different idea, and I will discuss it with my students actually before deciding one or another way. The thing is, technical astrology is technical astrology. It's just a different level of complexity. You need to figure more technicalities doing it. I will make them as easy as possible, but they will be still technicalities. However, there is a kind of astrology which they call Magi. It's M-A-J-I, which is very interesting, and it produces interesting results. And at the same time, what's peculiar about it, it's a very simplified school of astrology. It doesn't use houses. It doesn't really use the signs of the zodiac. What it uses is planets and aspects. And I will be teaching aspects. I'm already teaching planets, and I will be teaching aspects in the second half of my astrological forecasting course. And my idea that people who will complete this current first course will be in a very good position to approach Magi astrology. And why this is important for me? Because I want my students to have some practical working result in the end. For example, in the end of this astrological forecasting course, they will have a skill allowing them to write popular astrological forecasts. Some students are already writing beautiful astrological forecasts in one of our channels of communication. With general astrology, it's difficult. What will be the result of me teaching you the basics of general astrology? You knowing the basics of general astrology, that's it. Nothing exciting about that, you know. It's good to know the basics. You can then go further and learn more complex, more interesting things. But as a, you know, incentive, you will keep studying for several months. You will pay a certain amount of money, and then what? You will learn the basics. I'm trying. I will probably do that. I will probably create that course. But for my first courses, I want to do something very special, and that's why I'm considering creating Magi astrology course, because in it you can answer some very important questions about money, about love, about sexuality, and they really give you some simplified but working solutions, and you can use them straight away in an interesting way. That's why I'm thinking, but I will be speaking to my students before deciding what would they prefer. Magi astrology, and I will need to explain what this astrology actually is. Actually, my second free webinar will be about Magi astrology. I will be telling and showing what this astrology is, what it does, why it is interesting, why it is exciting. And then I will ask people what they want. And yeah, that's the plan. Yes, fairy dust. So I answered about my more webinars. Currently, what I have in my mind, the second webinar is about major astrology, free for everyone, about what it is. Then I might create, if I will go the major astrology way, I'm thinking of creating the course as live webinars, like we're speaking now. But I will tell you, I will give you the plan. I have, for example, 10 webinars of major astrology coming, and we can meet and just work online, and you can ask me in real time about things, and I will be showing you pictures, answering your questions. That's the idea for now. A planet moving into someone's second house on the 30th day after birth. Yes, yes, Mariam, it can work like that. Yes. Very, very good idea. This is exactly how. So you are here combining the approach I'm teaching you with the secondary progression, but that's you're working consistently within the same system, and this will work. Yes, very good idea. Thank you. New apps, programs, calculators coming. Okay. Prophetic event prediction. I'm not sure I understand what you mean by this. About new apps, programs, calculators. Yes, I have a number of apps. Well, with the apps, with the mobile apps. The problem is I don't have time. I have Runic Oracle almost ready. I think if I spent like 3 or 5 days, I would just roll it out and make it available for both iOS and Android. Runic Oracle, and many people are waiting for it and reminding me about it. And it was a very popular app, and it doesn't work anymore on iPhones. So basically, I have a bunch of apps that stopped working. And the first thing I need to do is to fix them. But right now, we starting these schools, creating this course, I simply cannot find any time. I'm working. The last day I worked from 6 a.m. to midnight. Busy here at the moment, but it will become, once I release the first course, I hope I will have more time for the apps. Also, the other major things which is coming now. I'm now speaking with an Israeli company about them becoming my business partners. I have now Jupiter in my 7th house, as you know, about foreign partners, business partners, about rebuilding Lunarium from scratch using a contemporary platform, because Lunarium has some, if you use it, some major technical problems. And again, I just don't have time and money to fix them all. With these partners, I hope to rebuild, and they want me to stop doing the technical stuff. They want me to do only astrology. And if that will happen, I have a meeting with them, an online meeting with them next Sunday. Then I have quite a number of ideas of calculators and apps I will be able to implement on Lunarium and around it. Well, the most important advice I can give for the current shift in the North Node: unleash your creativity. That's my advice. This is what I'm doing in my life. Just find that solar creativity in you, and open yourself for your creativity and do what you really like. That's the most important thing these days. Natal charts. By the end of okay, there are 3 questions in one, actually. Do I do natal charts? Well, I can. You can create your natal chart yourself easily. There are free online apps for that. The problem is not to create your natal chart, but to interpret it. And I don't offer these services. Why? Because to do this work properly requires a substantial amount of time, and it will never be paid enough for me to survive like that. So basically, this is what I'm teaching you to fish. I'm not giving you the fish. But the second half of this question, do I have any recommendation? You know what? I several times I sampled in consultations of different astrologers. Some of them were very prominent. Usually they were quite prominent. And in many cases, I wasn't really satisfied with what I've got. But there was one astrologer whose consultation was really encouraging, important, informative, my favorite. And this astrologer is Bernadette Brady. She is quite a well-known astrologer. She is an author of a book on astrological prediction. Let me type her name into the chat. Set name. I will put my name as Alex. Okay. Oops. Go. So the name is Bernadette Brady. She is a PhD. She is a tutor in the university when I'm studying now. But I got her consultation long before I became a student of that university. So and her consultation is the best. It just gave me, like, you know, the best kind of prediction for me is that people show you the light ahead, and they tell you, yes, that there will be it will be tough in this year, but then that year everything will be fine. And when it works like that, you know, I love astrology for that. That it works like this. And always, even if you're an astrologer yourself, other astrologers' consultation can be precious because they're looking at a different angle. They use slightly different methods, and they can see what you can't see for yourself. So let me look at the other questions. Whole house system more accurate. Here we have the course. I didn't answer the third part of this question. By the end of this course, can we make a simple chart for ourselves? You know, I have a plan to show you that using sun sign astrology, what I'm teaching in this course, you will actually find yourself within one step from interpreting a natal chart. It won't be, in the end of this course, a proper natal chart. It will be, but it will be something very close to natal chart. And you already know so many things that you need to know to interpret a natal chart, that basically I would be able probably to show you what to do with the natal chart in 1 or 2 lessons after that. That's my plan. I will see how it will work out. It's very innovative. It's a bit unusual, but the amount of knowledge you will gain in this course is more than usually people can take from a course in the basics of technical astrology. I'm just doing it in a little bit, you know, subtle way, teaching it, feeding it spoon by spoon, so to say. So, is whole house system more accurate than Placidus, Koch, etc.? Well, well, what I can tell you, they're all precise. I will just give you one fact. In Western astrology is very technical. In Western astrology, we believe in technology, into complex calculations and everything. So we use all those rather complex systems of houses like Placidus or Koch. In Jyotish, which I again will remind you, astrology, which survived many thousands of years without dying out, it's still alive, very much alive. They use whole house system, and in the Hellenistic astrology, they used whole house system. They didn't use anything complex like Coho Placidus, and it works for them very well. So it's up to you what you are using. Of course, when teaching Western astrology, I will be teaching Koch and Placidus, yes, because you need to be consistent. Working the Western way, you're working the Western way. But I also wish very much, I'm not that experienced with Jyotish, but what I know is quite amazing. And I wish I will be able at some point to teach some astrology, to teach some Jyotish to you, at least some elements, because even the elements can be so revealing. For example, the idea of Atmakaraka, it's very important. It's very interesting. What is the most important advice for North Node in Leo? As I mentioned, play, release your joy, be like a child, be sincere, be joyful, be creative. This is what, be proud of yourself, believe in yourself, be like a light for other people, be like the sun for other people. The sun is the ruler of Leo. So every year has a new theme in progressions. So every year has a new theme and progressions in the angles of the planets moving through the houses, or both. I'm not sure I understood the question, but yeah, well, progressions move all the time, but some planets move in progressions very slowly. The angles, yes, the angles move in progression. There are several ways how you can move angles. For example, one of the ways which comes to my mind is that you move the meridian with the speed of the solar arc, and then you put the other houses corresponding to this meridian for the given location. That's as simple as I can express it. But progressed planets move with different speeds. The moon is the fastest. The moon is the fastest of planets, and it moves like 12 to 13 degrees a day. So progressed moon moves approximately 1 degree a month. And so it's all very often used in secretary progressions. On the other hand, planets like Uranus, in the whole lifetime, it can move 1 degree or 2, or a little bit. It will move backwards and forwards. They don't move that much. They're not very useful in secondary progressions. But everything keeps moving in secondary progressions. That's true. Are you familiar with philosophical astrology by Arnold Kessler? No, I'm not familiar with this school. Any secondary progressions done on your whole year, i.e. age 58? Look at my chart on day 58 after moment of birth. Or do you move forward 51 degree? Oh. Not very clear, but let me understand in the way I understand this the question. So yeah, well, first you can look into the ephemeris on the 58th day after birth, and that will give you the progressed positions for the 58th year of your life. You can do it differently. You can do a regression if you want to know that. It's a bit overwhelming, can be, for people not familiar with astrology, and not every astrologer will use that, but it's recommended by some American astrologers, and with my approach, I'm sure it works as well, and I tested it on my life, and regressions work as well. What is regression? You can go backwards in time. You can count 58 days before the date of birth. And that line in the ephemeris also will tell you something about your 58th year of life. But I'm not very happy telling you this here. I don't want to overwhelm you with the amount of information. Also, having said that, you can also do it differently. What I mentioned is a progression and regression. There is also a method of prognostication called direction. And direction is more useful when you are interested in the movement of Uranus, for example, because in direction, every planet moves the same distance. You take the natal chart, and for example, you want to find out what will happen on the 58th day of birth. The simplest way to do that is symbolic direction. It's very simple. You just add 1 degree per year of life to each and every planet. For example, add 58 degrees to the position of every natal planet. And you will have directed positions of planets. And they will make some aspects to natal planets. And that will tell you something. Usually when I cannot sleep, I start calculating symbolic directions for myself for different ages ahead and figuring out what's going on. And they're very simple symbolic directions, but they also work quite well, especially for some aspects. Try them and see how they work for you, if the information I told you is sufficient. Again, it might be a little bit of overwhelming for some people. After teaching the beginners through the actual project, what is your expectation after teaching the beginners through the actual project? Again, I don't understand everything, I think, but we actually some lessons in this course will be actually showing you. They will be workshops, basically. I will be showing you in reality. Here's, for example, I'm going to write a forecast for the next year. And I will just sit and write that forecast and explain step by step. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm doing. And of course, students can ask me all sorts of questions. That will be recorded. That won't be a webinar. This course, the first course, is recorded videos. But maybe in the future, I will transition to teaching webinars only. Who knows? But yeah, we'll have within this course plenty of practice. And why I'm encouraging students to use Slack, one of the channels which we're using in this school, because already one of the students is writing the wonderful examples of forecast, and everyone can see, can read and learn how she's doing that, and they can share their forecasts. That's already a practice. There is plenty of practice in this course, potentially, but that's up to you. If you practice, then you practice. If you don't, I can't force you to practice when you don't want to do that. And Slack is just a very good environment for practicing, for sharing those forecasts and for discussing them. The nature of quincunx. Okay. The nature of quincunx. It's a very interesting. Quincunx is a 150 degrees aspect, and it's really interesting. Some astrologers call it semi-major. And the simplest way to define it, with my technical background, I would say, is the aspect of positive feedback. Positive feedback. What's a positive feedback? It's when, okay, I won't go into the technicalities. I will explain you between people, for example. Very often people choose a partner who is in quincunx with them. For example, a Gemini can choose a partner who is a Capricorn or a Scorpio. Because of this particular peculiarity of quincunx, that this is a positive feedback. what happens in life when one of those persons in quincunx does something good for the other person. That person returns this good, but in a bigger amount, positive feedback. And this person receiving something good returns still something bigger, a lot bigger, of good stuff. This is the, but okay, they got married, okay, they live for a year, they're happy, and this positive feedback feels really good because, you know, the amount of good between them grows exponentially. And then at some point they become to do not very good things to each other. And the thing is, the same positive feedback works. This person does a little bit of bad thing to that person, and that person doesn't in response a big amount of bad thing, and so on. You see, so this is a very bumpy aspect, so to say. It's very energetic, and it works very quickly. It creates impulses because something which appears goes exponentially up, and then something happens. This is how I can explain it for now. According to the moon sign calculator, my moon is in Aries, but astro.com, etc. say my moon is in Libra. Whoa, UTC -5. I was born in New York, USA. Well, the difference between Aries and Libra is very big. It's you cannot explain it by the time zone. First thing, why this, sometimes I notice that this moon sign calculator, I'm not saying that this is the best moon sign calculator in the world. I still need to work on it, and hopefully I will make it better in the next version of Lunarium. Sometimes it just doesn't work. I saw it a number of times. It gives you Aries because it's just zero. The calculation result is zero, and then it falls into Aries. Try a few times to see what it tells you. Sorry about that, but sometimes it just, yeah, has some glitches. The other thing I want to tell you, why it uses UTC -4. The thing is, this calculator, moon sign calculator on my website, uses the time zones which are programmed into the platform. And that programming on the Java, it uses Java platforms time zones, which are not regularly updated first. Second, they don't have the history of all the changes of the time zones. And that history, especially in the USA, can be very, very complex. For example, currently in Florida, they have Eastern time. It's in the Eastern time zone, the same as New York, for example. But there was a time in the past, and both use daylight saving time. In the past, there was a period when they were also in the Eastern time zone, and Florida didn't use daylight saving time, and New York did. And there are many of those historical changes. Astro.com is the website which is quite sophisticated and complex, and Alois Trindle, who is behind this website, he created all those libraries astrologers use now for astronomical and astrological calculations. So when in doubt between astro.com and my moon sign calculator, believe astro.com. This is what I can say. This is a very powerful website in many ways, and they use the historical database of the time zones, which is the most precise thing you can get in the world at the moment. Currently, I don't use that historical database. I don't have it. Can you suggest a good text on some symbolic directions, please? Well, I have one book, yes. I will answer the question fully a little bit later, okay? I have one book. I need to find it. Yes, I have one book in mind. But symbolic directions are very simple. Basically, I told you it's 1 degree per year. The question is, well, you find aspects. Okay, I will teach you what aspects are in the second half of this course. The whole thing is how to interpret those aspects. But again, I will be teaching you that. I'm not sure if a book on symbolic directions might be very useful, but I do have one book in mind. I just need to find it and to see what's in it. I will answer this question later. Look, I started speaking about astrology, whom I would recommend for a consultation, and Bernadette Brady. I didn't finish my thought at that point. The thing is, her consultations, you can find her on the internet. She's got a website, and she offers consultations. They are quite expensive. I don't remember, is it £200 or £300? They are quite expensive, but they're really good. It's up to you. It's up to you. Local space astrocartography. I can't recommend you anyone. I have some books on that. I was interested in the subject. I still keep in mind, for example, when I'm traveling somewhere, I'm checking my astrocartography. I know that there are places in the world that are very interesting from the astrocartography point of view, and I hope I will move there one day, or at least go travel there one day. Australia is one of those places. But no, I can't tell you, I can't recommend you anyone. I could recommend you to read those books. There are many good books on the subject. It's again, you know, there are some technicalities in creating those astrocartograms and local space charts, but software will do that for you. And then you just need to interpret. And to interpret, you just need to understand three things: the nature of planets, the nature of aspects, the nature of houses, perhaps. But these are the basics of astrology. What my teacher taught me to do is just to ask, if you have a question about astrology, ask it to yourself, first of all. And chances are you will give the best answer to yourself. And read the books. Yod is about positive feedback. Yeah, why Yod is such a powerful configuration? Because it's got two quincunxes and a sextile. It's a closed configurations, and all closed configurations are very powerful. And Yod is especially interesting because it creates this, yes, amplification in its focus point. Very powerful. Maybe too powerful. That's why it is such a special configuration. Personal karmic patterns. You know, there is a what's the time? Oh, I think we should come to finish soon. But yeah, about karmic interpretations, there is a branch of astrology which is called karmic astrology, and they interpret in the karmic ways, like in the terms of the past lives, some special factors like lunar nodes, which they believe are karmic, has a karmic meaning, and they are, of course, yes. They interpret retrograde planets in a karmic way. Like if you've got retrograde Mars, then in the past life you were a soldier or a warrior, and in this life you're resting, you're relaxing, you don't use your Mars that much, so it's retrograde. I never found any kind of any example of karmic astrology which would satisfy me in its depth of understanding and interpretation. What I saw was quite superficial and not satisfying. Also, I believe that if you are interested in karmic approach to interpretation, then you should treat the whole chart in that way. Everything is karmic, absolutely everything, because this life is just, you know, one link in a chain of incarnations, and it can be everything in it is karmic. If your planet is direct, maybe it was karmic in the retrograde in the past life, and so on. I don't think it makes sense to emphasize just some elements of the chart as karmic and others as not karmic. Well, this is it. I think we came to the end of the list of questions, and it's more than 2 hours now. Oh, I have Solar Fire. Is this a good this is Solar Fire is my favorite program. I had several, I tried different major software applications, astrological software applications in the decades of my experience, and Solar Fire is my favorite. Yes, it has a little bit unusual user interface, and it's not to everyone tastes probably, but the greatest benefit of Solar Fire is that it's very easy to install, and it's technically very robust. It works on all versions of Windows. It works in virtual machines, and I had like WinStar, which also was quite an expensive program, but its installation is such a pain. I still own it. I still own the license, but I don't install it because you need to do some jump for some very difficult hoops to install it and so on. There are some other software packages that have problems with the newest versions of Windows and so on. So Solar Fire, I would recommend it wholeheartedly. Which books on astrocartography? Okay. What's yod in Russian, please? It's yod. Yod is just a closed figure made of two quincunxes and the sextiles. I think I would translate it into Russian as yod, just that. So about books on astrocartography, I have a bunch of them. If you send me an email to remind, I will just send you the list of those books I have. That will be the easiest way to answer your question. So this is it. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. This was my very first experience of the webinar, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. So we'll have many more webinars in the future. I'm sure about that. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for being a part of my project. Excellent. We'll do some very good things with you in the future. I'm sure of that. Thank you, and bye-bye.